Okay. Most of you guys have met me. I'm Feil. I'm a chiropractor in town. I like working with goals here. I've worked with several of the members. I've had a pretty good relationship with Kim just because our philosophies align. I'm a big person on movement and moving well and keeping active. If people aren't able to keep active, their general health just decreases. I'm a big believer in just eating well, thinking well, moving well. And that's where kind of the chiropractor comes in with me. I went to Iowa State like 10 years ago as exercise science major, really understood the concepts and the importance of exercising, but then there was that class and they said the number one reason people don't exercise is money, and the number two reason people don't exercise is injuries. So that's one of the things I got into chiropractic because it just made sense. There's things I can do to prevent injuries, speed up healing, keep people moving, keep people active. This talk here that I'm doing, it's on balance. Call it balance is your sixth sense. If you don't have balance, it's just like if you didn't have sight or you didn't have hearing or anything like that, you'd just be really off. When I call it the sixth sense, I'm not talking about this sixth sense, Ron. I'm talking about, no, we don't see any dead people here. But it's a lot of things that go together when we talk about balance. So just a basic outline. I want to talk, first of all, why balance is important and what it really applies to, not only performance-wise, but injury-wise. How do we improve it? That's the big thing. I can talk to you all day long about, well, it's this important and that, but what can you do to actually make it better? And some simple things. I'm not even going to add that much stuff. It's just stuff you already do here in goals. If you do it a little differently or pay attention to a couple different things, your balance will improve dramatically. Taping. I'm going to go over a little bit of what I call kinesio taping, because that you'll see as I talk about some of the sensory stuff how that plays in. It's some new stuff out there that can help with balance or just with injuries in general. And then we're going to go over just a little bit of stretching and exercise at the end. Some specific things that will help you with your balance and just help you in general getting through here, doing kettlebells, doing stuff like that so you're a little more on. I'm actually going to kind of review a couple things, some of the new things Kim threw at us this last week. I want to go over just a couple pointers on those. Actually, if you do those exercises right, those actually will help improve your balance. Simple stuff though. And then first here we got to do a little bit of a pre-test. So everybody stand up for me, shoes off. This will be your only test today, I promise. So shoes off, but keep your shoes right next to you. So we're going up on one leg. So everybody go up one leg for me. We're balancing. All right. Now you're actually going to switch legs. Because you probably went up on your leg that was probably most dominant. So we're going to move you to your less dominant leg. And if you need to get next to a wall or something to hold on to, grab it. Now, take that leg back, kind of see what that feels like. Put your shoes back on and balance again. Yeah, you just need one shoe. Yeah, whatever that, if you were balancing that last one, that non-dominant leg, whatever shoe that is, put that shoe on. I guess I should have had you. I didn't know you guys didn't have all your shoes. Sorry. So you're going with the shoes on. Do you feel any difference? Is it harder, easier with that shoe on versus the shoe off?
Harder.
Harder. Some people harder, some people easier. That depends on how that shoe fits and how it stabilizes your foot. Now, we are going to, and this one you probably do want to get next to something, a chair or the wall. I want you up on that foot with the shoe on, and you are closing your eyes. Harder or easier? Exactly. Now, keeping the eyes, you can actually open the eyes, and I want you slowly turning the head. Harder or easier? Now, we're going to really spin the head. So you can actually put the foot down, spin back and forth, do circles, whatever, for 30 seconds, and then you're going up. And you're all off. So we'll explain. You guys can sit back down now. I'll explain as I go through here. Each one of those things, we were challenging a different part of what we call your equilibriums. So we'll kind of explain why each one of those made it harder and harder and harder as we went through. Now that I get you guys all headaches. So why is it important? This is where Greg and I were talking just yesterday on this. When it comes to balance, it comes to performance. And a great analogy for balance is football. Literally all football is you're giving someone a ball and the other team's trying to knock that person off their balance and tackle them and get them on the ground. Every so once in a while, every couple of decades comes around a player like this. This is Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders did these things that just made people look ridiculous out on the football field, because normally you think you're running in a straight line, your goal is just to be faster than everybody else. Barry Sanders was quick, but he wasn't the fastest player out there. But he could do something where most people run vertically. I swear he could run horizontally. You look at his legs, and you see where his shoulder pads are nice and level, but where are his legs going? They're going completely the other direction. And to do that, we'll kind of break this down. Hopefully after this talk here, you'll see how his core, his hips, and his feet allow him to position his center of balance so he can do things from a balance standpoint that just are ridiculous and made him ridiculously successful in football. I'm not saying we're going to turn you guys into Barry Sanders, but some of that stuff that we do in here is pretty functional. A lot of the running around the room and the kickboxing and all that, can we get your balance better so you can perform that easier? And that really goes into what we call agility. Agility is that technical term of being able to control your center of gravity, your center of balance, and move your body so you can control that and do sporting-like moves. So whether it's doing a roundhouse kick, it's doing a squat with a kettlebell, it's doing something like that that you can gracefully move your body. And I don't know if there's any new challengers in here versus old challengers. I remember even you, the people that have been here a while, you remembered how awkward it was your first couple weeks doing a lot of the things here. And a lot of that's just getting your sense of balance and getting that agility, getting that idea, the concept of being able to move and control your own body. And that's where agility really comes in. When I talk about center of balance or that center of mass, this is where it kind of comes in chiropractically for me. Really, your center of gravity is right in front of the middle of your lumbar vertebra. So it's right in front of what we call like lumbar, would be the bottom 5 vertebrae here. L3, L2 is technically where that center of balance is. When kids are growing up, so like grandkids or your own kids, they kind of hit those awkward years, kind of lower teens. Lots of times it's because their leg bones are growing a lot faster than their torso. So their leg bones push that center of balance or their center of gravity up. It's not until they hit their later teens when their torso starts to grow and that center of balance actually drops back down. So it kind of gets them off. Same thing with pregnancy. Some of the women in here who've been pregnant, when you're pregnant, you put that mass out here and your center of gravity changes. And that's where not only you'll see that back change where they start to hyperextend, some of that is moving your lumbar spine forward to get that center of gravity back in a place where you can get it over your feet. And that's where some of the lower back issues and pelvic issues happen in pregnancy. It's not just the extra weight of everything, it's changing the center of balance and changing your posture and how that can affect your lower back as well. This is a big thing with me. When it comes to balance and sports and athletics, it's not all about agility and some of that stuff. Some of it has to do with recovery and relaxation. Ideally, when we talk about posture, we should look at someone and they should have their ears over their shoulders, shoulders over their hips, you've heard this before, hips over the knees and ankles. If that's not right, or if you're standing and you always kind of do one of these, you're leaning to one side and lean a little forward, you're not putting the stress of the weight of your body through the joints, you're putting it through the muscles. And if you're off balance, your balance isn't good, you're overworking muscles. So when you're in class, that hour-long class that you're off balance and things, you're overworking things, that class is a lot harder on certain muscles like hip muscles or stomach muscles or back muscles, particularly back muscles, because people don't have that good center of balance, they don't have the good posture, and they're tightening these things all class long, and then afterwards, well, why does my back hurt a lot more? It's not because in class you did specific back exercises, it's just everything you did, because your posture was off or your balance was off, you're overworking these muscles. And that's where having a good sense of balance actually leads to relaxation, recovery, and better performance. And the last thing is preventing injuries. What we'll kind of talk about here, we'll get into it, is a lot of it has to do with sensory and your brain and all this stuff. So when you get out and do something like this challenging, or even some different challenging activities in class, if you have that control from your brain, from your sensory organs, from your eyes, from your ears, all this stuff that kind of goes together, if you're able to control that, you're not going to have that issue when you're out walking down and hiking around where you roll your ankle and twist it and sprain it, and then you're set back a couple weeks. So, everybody stand up for me. We're just gonna, like I said, I don't want too much sitting. Nice day for that. This is just a little bit of a quiz. Anybody throw out some answers? Why do people lose balance? Any ideas?
They drink so much.
I didn't put that down. That is a good one. That's not on my answers, but
they lose their flexibility.
Lose a loss of flexibility, and that can be due to injuries and different things like that, or sedentary. Any other ideas? I'll just go through a couple here, and then Kim, I actually want you to come up towards me.
Okay.
I'm just going to look at something here.
Oh.
So, first one, this one's a real obvious one. This is a stroke. If people have stroke, I don't know if you met like a parent or grandparent like that. If you have a stroke in the right area of the brain, you will lose your sense of balance. Another one, injury. I'll break this kind of down as far as when we talk about injury. If you injure a muscle or you injure a tendon, that muscle and tendon or that ligament can't send information back up to your brain effectively, especially in your legs and your hips. Another one is disuse. And I put this extra one, age and disuse, I put those right next to each other because lots of times it doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, I've had 80-year-old grandmas that have awesome balance. And that has nothing to do with it. It's the people that stay active. Like my grandma's a good example. She is in her, close to her 90s, still lives by herself, gardens, mows the lawn, has never driven a car, walks in town, gets her groceries, gets the mail every day. If you have her go up in balance, she's right on. It doesn't really matter with age. There is some age things where your brain loses some neurons eventually, but a lot of it is you use it, then you won't lose it. And this other one, and this is where I want everybody to freeze. Don't move. And Kim, come here. And this is where, oh, Greg didn't move. Come back. Go back to where you were, Greg. This is where you'll see, so like we got the couple right here looking at their positions and what they're doing. And particularly, Sherry, all right, Sherry, don't move. Everybody look what she's doing there. This is, don't move at all. Look at how she has, and this is kind of the cool thing here, and I'll explain this picture, I'll go back to it. Look at all these guys, how they put their weight onto their right foot, and then you flare out the left. That is really common when it comes to asymmetries in our body. You guys can all sit back down.
Is that good or bad?
I'll explain.
It's not good.
It's good and bad. It's actually normal, but too much of it like that, overdone, can lead to issues. You guys can all sit back down. I'll explain why that happens. Normally when people think of symmetry and we think of balance, and we really get that thing where everybody, because we have two arms, we have two legs, we have 2 ears, 2 eyes, everything seems really symmetrical. You forget about some of the actual inner organs where inside of us, we're not actually balanced. We have a heart on the left, and we only have 2 lobes of our lungs on the left. We have 3 lobes of our lungs on the right. What that does is it changes our diaphragm. Also on the right side, you have a big hunk of liver over here, some bigger than others, depending on how much you drink. That liver throws us off a little bit too, and that also affects the diaphragm. The importance of the diaphragm is it comes in and helps stabilize, and your diaphragm, which is the muscle that moves your lungs up and down, it goes right across here. You can kind of see how there's a little difference in those lungs. The diaphragm hooks right up in with your psoas, or your hip flexors. So your right psoas is technically a little longer and a little stronger than your left. And that leads people to doing this posture right here, where you put the weight onto the right hip, flare out the left leg, because this right hip goes back like this, the left one sinks forward, and you can kind of see that as I went into this.
That's the mommy position, because when you're holding a kid.
Exactly, that's where you go to. And that's been around for decades. And this is where I'm kind of weird if you ever go to a museum with me or anything like that. My wife's big into history. I'm going around like taking pictures of the statues, like looking at their feet, looking at their hips and all that stuff. But this has been it's been going on for decades, I mean centuries, as long as humans have been around, because that asymmetry is natural. And when you look, it's the shifted weight onto the right, they flare out the left. And that's kind of just a natural pose. When you have people stand long enough, that's where I kind of had you stand up, and eventually you guys would all kind of ended up like that. It's just that natural thing. But that's where it's natural, yes. When you said it, is it good or bad? But if you overdo it for too long, what happens? Certain muscles start to tighten, certain muscles start to flare, certain parts of your core starts to weaken, and then when you actually have to do something symmetrical, like a kettlebell swing, you're dominant or you tend to shift that way. That's where it can kind of tweak things, and if you do that long enough or it gets too excessive, you end up, I'm going to have to see me.
So is that why if you're standing for a long period of time, like yesterday,
Yeah.
where it go red, right?
Yeah.
And we're just standing for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And today my lower back is killing me. But if I were to go and walk all day, it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother you
It's
because
just because you throw off naturally.
you throw it off naturally, and then all of a sudden you're overworking certain muscles. That's what I was talking about. Certain muscles get overworked.
Okay.
If certain things turn on, so like you're doing that, and then all of a sudden the deep muscles of the hip here are working harder. This is opening up and kind of jamming this hip up in the back, and it's like getting that balance where technically you could do a lot of things when you're walking because you're using things symmetrically if your gait's right.
Right.
Certain people, they get to the point where they'll be walking like they injure their ankle, and then every time they walk like this. That throws them off, and that's another thing. But if your gait's normal, you could just walk all day.
Okay.
I mean, that's where kind of, I guess this next slide, we evolved to walk. And this is, you guys have all seen, the ones that have seen my lecture before, I throw this in everything because I think it's just so telling of what's kind of happened to modern man. We talked about last time when we talked about, or not was last time, but we talked about some shoe issues and how, why we went from walking on all fours to walking on 2 feet. Some of that's efficiency. We're more efficient when we walk on 2 feet. We're able to chase down that woolly mammoth because we can technically run and walk for 18 miles like you just did this morning, no problem. That woolly mammoth's going to get heat stroke and pass over and die, and that's where humans caught their game way back then. There's other things that happened, though, from a balance standpoint that had to change when we went from here to here, because if we talk about that center of gravity, the best thing you can have is a center of gravity that's down low. Barry Sanders' center of gravity is really low. And when you're on all fours, your center of gravity is really close to the ground. Like I have my dog's a wiener dog, so he's really low. But he's really agile. Because he can just jerk, and move easily. As we got taller, we had to develop things differently. And there's 2 things that had to change. Our feet had to change, and our hips had to change. And that's where we'll talk about in here some of the exercises we're going to do. That's where it's going to be focused. Specifically with the hips. Let me go back a slide here. If you were to look at your dog, a monkey, or anything like that, these hip muscles back here, your glute muscles like this, they are really long on these animals that walk on all fours. They attach way down this IT band. In humans, we have glute muscles too. They're the muscles that run from here and attach right in here. On a 4-legged animal, this muscle would attach all the way down like this. So you lose some mechanical advantage here. Because on a 4-legged animal, that glute doesn't need to help stabilize them when they're on one leg, because the dog's never standing on one leg. Humans stand on one leg all the time. Running is standing on one leg, just falling forward. It's 1, 1, 1, 1. We have to stabilize your hips. There's the glute muscle. There's the other glute muscle on the side, the minimum or the medius, glute max. And there's all these deep muscles in here that went from walking all fours, they're nice and long, and then we shrunk them all up. And that's where we end up with some issues like piriformis syndrome and things like that, because as humans, we had to shrink those muscles, and they have a tendency to tighten. And sometimes they'll pinch on your nerves and all kinds of stuff that cause a lot of pain. So functionally, this slide's kind of boring when you look at it, but it's really important. This is where those muscles on the sides of the hips, so like when we talk about what we're going to go over fire hydrants and stuff like that, you're working these muscles here, right here, the outside glutes. Those are important. When you get up on one leg, you'll see lots of people, they'll go up and they'll just shift down like this. So these muscles are weak over here, and I'm putting all the stress through the sides of my hips. Versus if they're strong, I can hold up like that. And that's where some of that stuff that you guys are doing, the fire hydrants and the side legs and all that stuff that you're doing through the new exercises, it's working to develop these. And we need to focus on that, because that's what's actually going to get you, balance-wise, you're going to be able to stand up. This one here, probably the most boring picture in my lecture, but probably one of the most important ones. So after this, you guys are probably all going to go down to Lowe's, and you're going to buy a bunch of mulch, because it's nice outside, and it's time to start working on your yards. The big thing with mulch is, you got to get that mulch into your trunk of the car. So you're taking the 40 peg 40-pound bag of mulch. You got to take it up, and the problem with getting it into the trunk of your car is you can't squat and do it. Like ideally, you'd be able to kind of get down, squat, pick it up, and then take it somewhere else and squat down. But this is where using your center of balance and what I call like a deadlift motion, you have to actually be able to get that mulch into the car. Most people, they can't deadlift properly, and I'm just bending through the hips. They'll do this, where again, my center of balance, all of a sudden now, think of it, it's right here, is over my feet. Instead of being able to bend through the hips here, you see where the hips went back, the back's actually stable, the core is on, the center of balance is still over the feet. And that's what saves us from not getting injured, because if you're doing this, all of a sudden my balance is off, then I'm going to jerk off to the side, my muscle's going to pull, I'm going to jam, and I'm going to have pain. Versus if I'm able to do this and put it in, or if I have to put it up somewhere, I'm able to extend through my hips to get it overhead, so my center of balance again is over my feet. And that's just some of the simple things. We'll go over how to properly get down and up from a deadlift. It's not like we're deadlifting in this class, but it's one of those things, you go pick up the mulch from Lowe's and put it in your trunk, you've got to be able to do that motion through your hips. The last part, we talked about the hips. This part here is your foot. And our feet, I always use the example of a tripod. Just like this, coming down. And these are the 3 points that your feet need to touch the ground. There's your heel, and it needs to touch right underneath your big toe, and it needs to touch right underneath your pinky toe. If you don't have that tripod when you're up on one foot, you will compensate. So either you're going to be out here, and you can kind of see when I put only on these outside two, my balance is way off, or you're going to be inside. You may be able to pull this off, but what happens? My knees going in, my hips rotating down, I end up with an ACL tear, I end up with knee pain, I end up with hip issues, impingement, because I'm pronating through, or I end up with a bunion. Versus if I'm on all 3 there, my balance is right on. And that's where we'll kind of go over to some things to exercise the muscles of your foot so you're able to stand and balance and be rock solid. So, when we talk about balance, it's not just one thing like sight. When we talked about a sense of sight, it's just your eyes and then going into your brain. Balance is really what we call the equilibrium system. Equilibrium, when it goes into science, equilibrium is really balance. Like a chemical equation you balance out, it's called equilibrium. It has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with vision. So when we closed your eyes when you were standing up in the beginning, it got harder because about 20% of your balance or 10% is just vision. So if your eyes are off, that can affect your balance. Your inner ear, and I'll show you that in a second here, there's a little apparatus in there that's like a little gyroscope in your head. And when I had you shake your head a lot, just like when you're on a merry-go-round when you're a little kid and you spin and spin and spin and then get off the merry-go-round and your balance was just way off, that's because this little fluid in your inner ear was off. You have your joints, and this is what we call proprioception. Don't worry about the name, just worry about the fact that when you close your eyes, you can feel when you move your joints, your arm here, you know the position that arm's in. That's called proprioception. It's that concept that your joints know where you are in space. And the last thing is touch. And a lot of that has to do with the touch on our feet. And that's where I had, with some of you, when you put your shoes on, it dampened your sense of touch on your feet. And that's where certain shoes are good for certain things and certain shoes aren't. A shoe with a lot of shock absorption, a lot of cushion, dampens your touch on your feet, and it makes your balance a lot harder because you're not getting that information into your brain. This is just a couple more slides on that. So technically in your brain, it's this base here. It's those people that have a stroke in their cerebellum, or the back of their brain. Those are the people that just lose their balance, and they are off big time. There's a lot of sad stories like that. It's just one of those things. If you have a stroke here, the balance, that's where all the coordination happens. When I was talking about the inner ear, there's a couple things with, if I can show this easier, I can't reach up there. So right here is where you actually hear, that's your tympanic membrane. There's a little muscle that attaches to it, there's some nerves. But the thing people don't often realize until you get a really bad earache and your balance is off, that there's this other apparatus here. That's that little gyroscope in your ear. It has canals that go forward and sideways and different directions. It can tell where you are at in space. And if that's off, then your balance is off too. But the biggest thing, and we'll see a slide coming up next, is how your joints, your ligaments, your muscles send the little receptors, send information all the way back up your spinal cord into your brain. That's where a lot of balance comes in, and that's where posture, position, taking care of injuries, people that have sprained their ankles chronically, and those ligaments are all torn up and not functioning properly. If they don't get those functioning again, your brain's not getting information, and your balance is going to suck because you're not sending that information up to your brain. So, how do we improve it? Like I said, I'm not an optometrist, but vision only really has about 10% to do with balance. That inner ear stuff is about 20%. 70% of most of the balance feedback comes from sensory and your position and your joints. So that's where posture and form and making sure you have the right shoes on and getting to feel the ground, that's what's going to make the biggest key in getting your balance to improve. Our feet are the second most sensitive area in our body. You can kind of see here the different, this is what we call a homunculus. It's in our brain, what's the most important areas. You see how big the feet are? That demonstrates how much sensory information goes over your feet. Your face is also very sensitive, and your hands are very sensitive. You don't think about your feet that much. And then I always use a slide, are we bathing our feet? I use that little spa thing there. Sometimes that's the shoes we put our feet into. We do 40, 50 years of putting in these nice cushy shoes, and you join goals and you're like, why are my feet so crappy? Because you've been bathing them your whole life. So I'm not saying go run around in the mud all day, but that's how humans evolved. We didn't start wearing shoes until about 10,000 years ago, and those shoes were just pieces of leather on our feet. They weren't really the shoes that we're wearing now are just the last couple decades. So we haven't really evolved to wear shoes like that. Another thing here, posture. This is my example of posture. You have two types of posture. You have what I call the plumber's butt. That's the people that are here, where there's just no curve in their back and everything's like this. And then you have the J-Lo posture, where it's super hyperextended. Either one of those, you can see it's not so much my hips, it's my pelvis that either moves here or my pelvis is way back like this. Either one of those people, and you can kind of see when you're doing, if you stand on your foot again, if you do that here or here, your balance is off. And it pushes your foot out to the outside or into the inside, depending on the posture. A lot of what you do in this class is finding, I'll use another celebrity example here, it's finding your inner Steve Urkel. Everything is ridiculously flat in the pelvis. It's not too much like this, and it's not too much like that. It's just locked in. And I always use the example with Urkel is he has these suspenders that act as his core muscles. Those core muscles hold your pelvis in a good position. So it's pulling you up like that. Not too much where you bend forward, but it's just that little kind of tension through here that holds you up. And when I say the core muscles, it's your oblique muscles. So when you do the oblique exercise, the muscles on the sides, because those are the ones that actually attach from your pelvis here up to your ribs and hold you. The six-pack here really only has a tiny attachment, that rectus femoris muscle only has a tiny attachment down here and a tiny attachment up next to the sternum. The oblique muscles go all the way along the sides and in the back, and that's what's really going to balance you. So it's getting out here. When you're doing sit-ups, it's not all about the six-pack. It's about this stuff out here. That's what's going to keep you balanced and posture. The last bit of kind of talking here before we get busy on some things is what we call lower cross syndrome. That's a technical term that I use a lot. Basically what it says is people kind of due to sedentary lives have weak abdominals, weak butts, tight lower backs, tight hip flexors. That's kind of that normal. Kim probably sees that in most new clients that come in here, or the coaches see that. You're kind of in this position where you're tight here, can't use your glutes, can't use your core. You try to balance that out. Just a little bit here, and I forgot to actually bring this tape. It's back at the office, but I didn't get there this morning, I apologize. When you guys all watched the Olympics, you guys probably saw a lot of this tape on different athletes. You see your shoulder there? That's what we call kinesio tape. It has a lot to do with a few things that I talked about today as far as posture and balance and sensory. You can use it for some injuries in here to help stabilize you, or if you have something that's chronically been bad, like I saw someone that has she's rolled her ankle so many times. When you feel around that ankle, that ligament in there has been torn years ago. It just, the ligament's gone. So are there other little things that she can use to help sensory-wise with her foot? Because we talked about it's important you have those ligaments and all that stuff to help you sensory-wise, position-wise. So kinesio tape it's a type of tape that stretches. And it's not like your traditional athletic tape that just kind of the white stuff you put on that locks you in. Kinesio tape has a little give to it, has a little bend to it. You can use that a couple different ways with people. It's meant to be about the weight of skin. It doesn't really restrict you. You can use it for a couple days. It does theoretically, and these aren't all proven yet, so I know many of you guys PhDs in here and stuff like that, this isn't all totally proven, but these are the theoretical principles. Mechanically, it can put you in better positions. And I use that a lot with posture. So people that are kind of rolled forward with their shoulder, I'll use some tape on them every once in a while, just for a couple of days, so I kind of tape that shoulder blade back, so they kind of feel that difference. Fascially, that's some of the stuff that holds the skin and all that together. Sometimes you have restrictions in there, like plantar fasciitis. Fascia is what it's talking about. You can use some of the kinesio tape to take some stress off that fascia. You can use it to improve space in areas. So like the tape, this is that blue stuff is the tape on top. By using it and stretching it, it will kind of pull up the skin and give a little space in an area. It's like an IT band issue where it's all kind of adhered down and tight. You use that kinesio tape, it kind of will pull that off and help mobilize the tissue a bit. Tendon-wise, if you have an MCL tear, like I had a wrestler come in to me a couple weeks ago with a bad MCL tear, which is this tendon here or this ligament, you can use the kinesio tape to take some stress off that. It's not going to take all the stress off like a full brace would, but it makes it so it can still train and still move while not being limited in his knee range of motion. You can use it functionally, like I said, from a sensory standpoint, again, helping with your posture, helping with your foot. And then you can also use it lymphatically. You can kind of see this is a bruise here, and they threw some kinesio tape on it, and you can see where that tape, where they had it, pushed that bruising away, pushed some of that through. If you do it right, you kind of spiderweb it, you put it on for a day this way, then you put another day here, here, and here. Like I had an example, I had a lady in Baltimore, she fell down the stadium, the National Stadium, a week before her wedding, had a nasty bruise on her arm. We used the kinesio tape and got rid of the bruise before her wedding. So we saved her $1,000 in my photo. But you can use it a lot of different ways just to kind of heal things. So let's go over a couple exercises. This is where you guys, when you want to take your shoes off. Anyone that wore jeans, sorry Dave, we're not going to split jeans, I promise. But I do want to hit some hip flexibility. We're going to go over fire hydrants. We're going to go over some of the plank hip stuff that we did here last week. I want to go over a little bit of a deadlift and then some foot things and then just a couple balance things. Real simple stuff, but effective. So when we talked about that hip, I'm going to show you some hip stretches, but the things you have to concentrate on is no JLo booty, no plumber's butt. It's got to be neutral. Because some of this stuff, like the first one we're going to go into, if you're really trying to do it and you're here, it's not doing what we want. So the first stretch, I'll throw this up here. Alright, so this is a hip flexion stretch. I'm going to show it a little differently, some different motions you can do with it. It's that same stretch you do here in class, but I want to make sure you're doing it with the right pelvic posture. So we're down on the knee and one leg forward. Things you're going to want to concentrate on are keeping the foot forward here, keeping this leg straight back here. And again, you don't want to get, I don't want to see a super arch in your back. I don't want to see rounded forward like this. I want the pelvis to be neutral. Think if you had a belt on your jeans or your shorts, that belt would be parallel with the ground. With this, I want you to lightly push yourself forward. You're kind of gliding forward, not arching your back to get forward, gliding forward. And then I want you taking the right hand, and we're going, we take both hands, we're going up. You're going to feel that right in the front of the hip. So the hip flexors, you're going up here. Again, not extending in the back, just stretching up through the hip. You're going to take the hands, and you're going to go towards the side where the knee is up. You're going to stretch over there, and you're going to feel that even more through that front of the hip. Everybody feel that? And then take the arms back down. And I want you taking the arms just like this, again, going towards the knee that's up, stretching to the side. Again, not twisting a whole ton in the back, trying to get that stretch in the front of the hip. And that's where you can kind of even drive that a little more. The problem is if you get sloppy in the beginning of class or the end of class where you're just doing this, you're bending through your back, you're not actually getting the stretch in our hip. So that's the first one, that's getting our hip flexors. Second one here, everybody go grab like a blue or purple band over there. Or grab somebody, or a couple people just grab a bunch for everybody.
Feel pretty good for you.
Yeah, as I say, runners, hip flexor stretch is super important because all running is here, backwards. So everybody laying on their back. Great, can I grab that? Thanks. This is going to stretch your hamstring, but it's not just, I mean, yeah, people think stretching the hamstring, they're doing this. The big problem I see with people stretching the hamstring is they'll do this. They're thinking they're stretching their hamstring, when all I'm doing is stretching my lower back here. I'm really not getting a ton of stretch in my hamstring. So lots of times I start out with people laying on their back to stretch their hamstring. And we don't just use our hamstrings going in one direction. We use it in a lot of different directions. So we need to stretch it in different directions. So looking at the screen here, you're going to start by bringing it up. And all I really care about with this hamstring is ideally we get to 90 degrees. Anything over 100 degrees is too much. Also, when you do this stretch here, I like the band because it pulls the pelvis down. Lots of people will do this stretch and their pelvis. This is not stretching my hamstring too. Again, it's all my back's coming up, my hip's not down, and here. That's where I'm looking for is, and that's where the band can come in too. Keeping the butt down and actually stretching the hamstring. So you're going to come up till you feel a little pull. If you feel numbness in the leg or tension in the leg, back it off a little bit. Your sciatic nerve runs right down through there. If you pull it too hard, you will feel some tension in the back of the sciatic nerve. You can take this, so you'll stretch for about 10-20 seconds going straight forward, and then we can take the band and we can go inside, so you'll feel, so your foot's going towards your waist. You're going to feel a little more stretch on the outer hamstring attachment, because the hamstring's two muscles. There's the outside and the inside. Holding that for 10 seconds, and then we can take it all the way out to the side here and get more of that medial or inside hamstring and a little bit of the adductors, which are the groin muscles. Those act as hamstrings in extension sometimes. So you can get both of those. Again, and you kind of bring it back over, get the inside, and then taking it back and get the outside. That's going to open up your hamstring more than just doing your traditional straight on hamstring stretch, because your hamstrings move differently. You're doing a kettlebell swing or a squat or some of those walking squats, the hamstrings need to activate side to side. Next one here, we got a couple of these stands without the punching bags on. I want you to sit on one of these, and we're bringing this right or left leg. You're going to sit with your legs crossed like this, and then I'll kind of take you through what we're doing next. Hopefully, I think we got enough in here. Everybody kind of grab it. And this is ideal for people that sit in an office or sit in a chair all day. You can work this several times a day, sitting at your desk, working the hip external rotators out, so when you come to goals that night or the next morning, that hip's nice and stretched. So we're bringing the leg up and over. The goal is to keep your back flat here, because we're going to keep our backs flat, bending at the hips, and I'll kind of go around and help you guys. I want you slightly to bend forward, keeping your back as straight as possible, and then you will feel that stretch right in the back of the hip. If you have a knee pain doing this or anything like that, let me know. I can tweak you a little bit. But the goal is to keep the back straight and a slight bend forward. You will feel that right through here. And this one's perfect for doing like 20-30 seconds at the office. So again, just a little bend at the back. You guys feeling that in the back of the hip? This one's ideal for what we call external rotation, or when you're trying to get in that squat and get down here, that's the motion that your leg has to do. And this is a good one sitting, and like I said, if you're sitting all day long, every 20 minutes, hour or so, throw the leg up there, 20 seconds of just working that out side to side.
I feel it like in my
That's
joint is.
Yeah, up into the front.
And yeah, and in the front and like right here
Right
in my
in there.
leg. And right like right.
I want you feeling it right back there.
That's not where I feel it.
And this is where you kind of see where that leg's changing.
Yeah.
So,
I have that really
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
yeah, and you can kind of see how that one's flatter over on hers. Yours is up in here. You want to focus on trying to get that right as it lengthens out.
Because of the height of the base.
It's going to take a little time. Right through there in the quad. That's where you put that little bend in, so it tightens, and then you're going to bend here. See where you're bending all the way back there?
There it is.
Right on.
Ow.
Yep. That's
We do an exercise similar where we lay on our backs.
Yeah.
The same
thing.
stretch?
I
Okay.
just like this one because you can do this at work.
Sure.
So yeah, same thing. It's again, that's where laying on your back and doing this, you can't cheat as much and bend through your back.
Okay.
Yeah, ow is the correct answer when you do this right.
No, it should be not ow.
Yeah, another one, this kind of takes it a little further. This is what we call in yoga pigeon pose. I think I've seen you guys do this before too.
Some of our instructors
Similar.
do this,
Some
yeah.
of the instructors do it. This one, you just take it easy on this one, especially you with the hip. We're not going to go as far, but this one you're going to get on, laying kind of just on your stomach here, on all fours. You're going to take one leg over, and this is where you can kind of tweak this. You can be out just like this, all the way in front, or you can start to bring the leg actually back through. In the pink shirt over there, yeah, you just, I'll help you on this one. Don't really mess around with it. I'll get there. You're coming over and you're trying to rotate those hips over. Again, not hyper-extending your back. You're trying to keep the pelvis neutral and trying to let the hips kind of sink in. You will feel that in the same place. A little, probably a bit of hamstring too in there. The better you get at this, the more you'll be able to bring the foot out. So it'll be out more like this. Again, this is kind of a pigeon pose where, again, you're not trying to round the back too much, not trying to hyperextend. You're trying to keep the pelvis neutral and get the legs opened up. Yeah. And you'll feel it. You'll kind of feel it on both if you're doing this right. You'll feel the hip flexors open up on one side, and you'll feel the piriformis muscle, those deep rotator muscles, really stretch in the back. And this is one where, if you're feeling a lot of tightness through here, this is one you can definitely work at home just to kind of open up. This one's awesome for sitting down, watching TV for a couple minutes, just getting the hips to open up. Because the better your hips open up, the easier a lot of these exercises are, and the better you're going to be able to balance. How does this one do that here? And this is where,
After.
Is this right on this side?
yeah, I want
Performance to work out with the balance.
balance there.
We stretch before just to get the muscles warm and to prevent injury, but after is,
And this is where you just
the theory is after is when the healing begins, and that's why you want to stretch when your muscles are warm. Yeah. Well, and then if we stretch too long prior to actually going, then you start to cool down again. And
it's stretch, but I want
so
you to feel in the muscle,
it's just,
not in the joint. That's not good. Short things never good stretch.
Bob, are you finding a place where you feel the stretch? Can you take that knee back further
Yeah, this one comes back just a little more.
and settle in? And it, again, it'll just be a progressive thing.
This last one works a little bit of rotation. This one works good if you have a foam roller at home. We don't really have anything here. We can still fake it just without using it. Because we did a lot of exercises where this comes in. This one, we want this. Because certain things you have to be able to rotate in. There's not a lot of good stretches for that. But this one's kind of an active exercise. Tammy's got this one down. You can use your hands kind of like this too, or you can use a medicine ball between the legs. What you're doing is you are bringing, so the knees are here. Like I said, use a fist, a medicine ball between the knees. You're bringing that foot up in the air like you're waving the foot up. And you're going to feel those hip muscles in the front that I talked about, the ones on the side. If you do this right, you will feel those suckers start to turn on. And a lot of people, you'll kind of do this side to side. See if there's one leg that's harder to do this than the other leg. But this one's a good just kind of warm-up exercise too before we start to do any of this balance stuff. Get those muscles turned on, side to side. Like I said, you should feel it right along the sides of the pelvis.
That's hot.
Foam roller is an awesome $10 investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one. I love it. It's good to roll on too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. This is so hot. Not so much.
This is one where getting the hips loosened up, this will be important as far as getting the range of motion. So, we're going back to this. Now we're actually going to do some things with our hips. This is the first thing I want you to actually, we're going to work on that a little bit of a deadlift. And I have a patient right now that can deadlift 700 pounds. We're not trying to get to that. We're just trying to get to, again, when you go to Lowe's and have to put that mulch in the trunk, that you know how to move your hips without putting too much stress on your back. And this will be good with a mirror, because the big thing, we'll want to do this sideways in the mirror. We want to focus on, just like when you're going to do a squat, you tighten the core a little bit. You're going to focus on not tipping the pelvis forward too much, not letting it round backwards, but actually moving your hips back. So when you go forwards, the hips move backwards. And that's where you'll feel some stretch to the hamstrings when we do that. That's why we try to stretch the hamstrings out a little bit. So we're here. And you can actually, we'll just try to go down to the ground. You're going down towards your toes. You can get a little bend in the knees. As your hips translate backwards though, you'll feel how you're able to get down further. If you're just trying to go down with your back, you'll get stuck, like right around the knee level. If you're able to kind of push the hips backwards, keep your center of balance over your feet, you're able to get down there further. And then again, while you're going up and down, you still keep that little bit of tension in your stomach muscles and the core. That will save your back. So that's where you get to Lowe's and you throw that mulch in there, you're not tossing your back out because you're putting too much stress to there.
And are your knees supposed to bend?
You can do a straight leg or a bent leg. A little bend in the knees isn't going to be a bad thing. If you get really good at it, you can do a straight leg where you just all the way down and up. But a little bend isn't going to hurt you. That's just going to take a little tension off the hamstring. And it's going to make it easier for you to maintain, again, thinking that Steve Urkel kind of right locked in pelvis posture here, so it's not that or that. And it's a concept sometimes we have to relearn because we forget how to use that area, how to make the muscles move. And again, it has to do with balance, keeping your center of balance, my belly button over my feet. That's what you really want to do with this versus having your belly button way over. Questions on this one? It's just a different concept. I just want you to think about that, like I said, before you do something where you're having to do that, just think about the hips going backwards. Same thing with reaching up. We'll just do this quick reaching up. If you're going to take that mulch, instead of putting it here, you have to put it on an upper shelf. The hips are coming forward a little bit. So you're opening up the hips, like that hip flexor stretch we did where we opened that all up. I want you to feel that motion there where the hips get in the front of the feet there because the weight's over the head. This doesn't make sense with just your empty hands right now, but if you had 40 pounds over here, you'd want the hips forward a little bit because that's going to counterbalance and put that center balance through your feet. So that's another thing.
That's the same way when we're doing overhead presses with kettlebells.
And it's not, this is where Kim will, it's not this hyperextending the back with the kettlebell above the head, it's hyperextending, it's extending the hips a little bit to get up there is fine. As long as I don't see this. And that's where people will mess up. They'll try to just push through the lower back to get it up there because they got that 30-pound or 20-pound kettlebell up there. It's here, and then you're going to feel balance. So So
And
it's a little bit.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
impossible to hyperextend with your knees slightly bent, don't you think?
Yeah. If you
What happens
bend-
is people lock their legs out.
Yeah, and
and
then you're just
arch.
going to hyperextend your back. If you
Yep.
have a little bend in the knees, a little bend in the hips, then you're, again, that weight's going through you. If you don't have that hip extension or the hip through there, you'll use muscles too much. You'll overuse the muscles in the back. You'll overuse some other muscles, and that's when you get sore and things aren't feeling good. Next one here. This is actually a foot exercise. And this one you may want to sit down again for me. This is what I call the short foot exercise. We're teaching you to contract the small muscles of your foot. And this is where a lot of people will not have control of these. If you don't get this the first time we do it, you have some foot issues, don't feel like something's wrong with you. What we're looking for is, again, kind of getting that concept where your heel, the base of your big toe, and the base of your little toe, that's your tripod. That's where, again, where our balance is where we should be at. I want you to take the muscles there, and you're going to squeeze the foot muscles, and you're going to pull all those together without lifting the big toe up off the ground, without lifting the little toe up off the ground, or without lifting the heel off the ground. I'll walk by you and show you kind of what it should look like. So see how the big toes come up there? I want it. Big toes down.
It seems like it should be easy.
So that guy's got to stay.
I've been doing it for like 3 months, trying to get his ankle back in. It's much harder than... Now we're working on doing the same thing with my thumb muscles. I know, but...
Did you do that with your foot?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
With the
They
bad
can
ankle.
cramp. If you don't use these a lot, they're weak. They will cramp. You just relax and kind of chill out, but that's something you can do. Again, this is a great desk exercise. You're sitting all day, you just bang, 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 a couple times, you won't start camping. I'm feeling right through there. Now turn on. So you can turn on. Relax. Good. Nice. And you may see some asymmetries. So like the left may be harder than the right. Yeah, you kind of see how this left one kind of.
Well, I want, yeah, I have a broken ankle.
And we're looking for just like. Just sometimes it's more mind over matter. Because keep that big toe down there. Trying to feel this right there.
I've been trying to master for 3 months since we worked on my ankle. Some days it works. Some days.
Yeah. Cramp?
Yeah.
All right.
She's trying to explain it to people.
You guys, I think I've actually worked with you guys a little bit on this already.
I'm just thinking about it. It's actually working better. You can manipulate
Okay, just get it down. Because that's it. So now you take that concept, everybody stand up. You're going to take that concept and you're going to, when we're working on balance, we're going to do another yoga move like tree pose, what it's called. It's here where the knee, don't worry about that first, just worry about getting up. But we're thinking about keeping the base of the big toe, the base of the pinky toe, and the heel on the ground. You're going to, if you weren't able to fire the muscles, keep trying on this, but you're going to try to fire those muscles a little bit. And you're bringing the other hip up and out to the side. You want to think about keeping that tripod. It gets close to something if you need support, but the better you can keep all 3 of those points on the ground, and you kind of feel as you rock, you can feel one point come up off the ground. You want to turn those muscles on in the foot, and this doesn't happen overnight. And you want to keep that locked in, and then be able to rotate the hip out and balance the pelvis without doing this too. This doesn't count if you're way out to the side. You're fine, sure. It's keeping that locked in.
Now, if you're working on this, it's okay to support yourself with a hand and get to a point where you can
get
hold.
To the point where you start with a full hand, then you get to a finger, and then you get to like taking the finger up off of it. So you're like 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off type thing. You just kind of slowly progress. And then when you get this down fine, then you close your eyes. And that just makes it a little harder. But work on this, just concentrating on keeping that foot locked in, feeling those hip muscles turn on, feeling your glute turn on a little bit. Because if the glute turns on and the core muscles turn on a little bit, especially the oblique muscles on the sides, it gets easier. And those are those kind of concepts where I kind of hit obliques, outside glutes, the foot muscles. When those all lock in, and when you're doing like where you set the kettlebell on the one leg in here in goals and you're kind of going up like that, that's where you should feel here, you should feel here, and in the foot.
And
this
not
is really
just here.
easy. The last one here, this is kind of a more advanced one. This can wake up your foot muscle. This is what I call a clock drill. So you're again up on one foot, and then you are going to, like there's a clock, so we got 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way around. We're taking our foot and we're reaching for 12. Then we're going 1, 2, 3, all the way around, keeping that tripod down on the foot, all the way back, and you got to switch over to the other side, and then finish it out. And that's a good one for, again, strengthening the foot, because you'll feel all that different muscles in the foot. As you get better at it, you can squat down in it and reach longer. Just really trying to keep everything in balance. And turn the glutes on, turn the foot muscles on, and it helps it get more stable. But that one's kind of a more challenging one if you get, and there's all kinds of little things, balance boards and all that stuff, but these are just some simple things you can work on just to keep it locked in. So, otherwise, thanks guys.
Hey, I
picked up a little bit.
Chris. I feel
Greg,
like
this is the next one for you. You and Sherry are going to pull that off.
I feel like the biggest moron. when we come to do these, where you have to have one leg off.
Look at your toes.
Yeah, just lock those
You-
suckers down.
You had your toe was.
You should always try for that tripod.
Which is our working arm?
That's right.
Is it the standing or is it the line? What do we do when we do this?
Like in
You
yoga
just
class,
bend a
you
knee
said
and you
spread your
do.
toes,
You know how we've got that Friday where everything is done on one leg? Or even when we're rowing? I mean, the purpose is to work your core and to get your balance
I
going.
want the knee in front a little bit.